Ninth Crusade. This was a time when the flames of the Crusades seemed to be dying down, but there was still one last spark left. The princes of Europe were tired, the empires were weakened, but one man, Prince Edward of England, was not ready to give up just yet. This is it, Ninth Crusade, the story of where politics in the name of religion, betrayal in the guise of friendship, and the lust for power hidden behind faith was about to play its last game. Damascus, Acre, and the sandy plains of the Holy Land. They were about to witness a final clash, where the Crusader flag will try to wave once again. But perhaps fate had something else in mind. This was the last crusade in history, where fate, the sword, and betrayal, the three come face to face. The Ninth Crusade, a chapter that is also the end of the history of the Crusades, and also the beginning of a new era of wars. Lord Edward's Crusade, sometimes called the Ninth Crusade, was fought in 1271 and 1272. It began under the leadership of Lord Edward and was later continued under the leadership of Edward Longshank, King of England. In practice, the war was an extension of the 8th Crusade, which was the last of the Crusades to reach the Holy Land before the fall of Acre in 1291, which ended the Crusader presence in that land. From Dover to Acre. In 1260, Cutuz and his general Baibars defeated the Mongols at the Battle of Ein-Goliath. After this, Cutuz was killed by the Mamluks, and Baibars was made the Sultan of the empire. As Sultan, Baibars attacked and defeated the Christian Crusaders in Arsuf, Etlit, Haifa, Safed, Jaffa, Ascalon, and Caesarea, one after another. The Crusaders sought help from Europe, but help was slow in coming. In 1268, Baibars captured Antioch. Thus, the Principality of Antioch came to an end at the hands of Sultan Baibars. This victory, while securing the northern front of the Mamluks, threatened the small Crusader county of Tripoli. Thus, with the approval of the government and the Pope, Edward took the cross on June 24, 1268. Louis himself died there in 1270. He had loaned Edward 70,000 for his crusade. Edward and his brother Edmund prepared an expedition to join King Louis of France in Tunisia, but it was delayed several times in the summer of 1270 because their father, King Henry III of England, on the advice of his counselors, did not want to join the expedition. The Lockrers chose to remain in England, and the Crusaders stormed Dover on August 20th. They were accompanied by Edward's wife, Eleanor of Castile. Edward, traveling slowly through France, reached Tunis on November 10th, too late for battle. The Treaty of Tunis, which ended the Crusades, had been signed on October 30th. Although Edward had played no part in the negotiations, the signatories were bound by it, which required Philip III of France, Charles I of Sicily, and Theobald II of Navarre to prevent Edward from attacking Tunis. But they failed to do so. For this reason, a portion of the indemnity paid to the Crusaders was also deducted. On November 18th, Charles granted Edward special permission to remain in Sicily while he consulted on his next steps. Although the other Crusaders decided to return home, Edward chose to head for the Holy Land to help the remnants of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Bohemond IV, Prince of Antioch, and the Count of Tripoli against the Mamluk threat. On May 9th, 1271, Edward finally arrived at Acre with a fleet of 8 ships and 30 galleys. It included over 1,000 Crusaders, including a special detachment of 225 knights. Meanwhile, Edmund also departed from England on March 4th, 1271. His route is unknown, but we do know that he traveled from France. Operation in the Holy Land. Edward arrived at Acre while it was still under siege. His arrival caused Baibars to change his plans and lift the siege of Acre. The troops under Edward's command were too small to face the Mamluks in direct battle, so he decided to launch a series of raids. One of these attacks was on Nazareth. The 14th century English historian Walter of Gisborough mentions that Nazareth was captured. Another raid was also made on St. George of Levant, but little damage was done beyond the burning of some houses and crops. Meanwhile, Edward was encouraged by the arrival of additional forces from England and Cyprus under the command of Edward's younger brother Edmund. He launched a major attack on the town of Kakin, supported by the Templars, Hospitallers, and Teutonic Knights. The Crusaders killed 1,500 Turkmen shepherds who were herding goats and cattle and took 5,000 animals as booty. After the Mongol invasions, these Turkmen shepherds were recruited by Sultan Baibars in 1268 for military service and were given horses, titles, and lands. Mongol raids. As soon as Edward arrived in Acre, he made efforts to form a Franco-Mongol alliance and sent an embassy to the Mongol ruler of Persia, Abaga, who was an enemy of the Muslims. The embassy was led by Reginald Russell, Godfrey of Vaux, and John of Parker. Its mission was to obtain military assistance from the Mongols. In a reply of September 4th, 1271, Abaga agreed to cooperate and asked on what date a joint attack on the Mamluks should take place. The Mongol army arrived in Syria in late October 1271. However, due to some ongoing conflicts in Turkestan, Abaga was only able to send 10,000 cavalry under General Samgar, a force consisting of the Seljuk occupation army in Anatolia and auxiliary Seljuk troops. These Mongols defeated the Mamluk Turkmen troops defending Aleppo and attacked south, sending other troops fleeing to Hama and ravaging the lands below as far as Apamea. But the Mongols did not capture it, and when Sultan Baibars counterattacked from Egypt on November 12th, the Mongols had already crossed the Euphrates in caravans laden with booty. Naval expedition off Cyprus. Initially, Baibars suspected that the Crusaders would attack Egypt by land or sea. Feeling his position was in serious danger, he attempted to prevent such an attack by building a fleet. After completing the construction of the fleet, rather than attacking the Crusader army directly, Baibars attempted to invade Cyprus in 1271, hoping to drive Hyacinthus of Cyprus, the nominal king of Jerusalem, and his fleet out of Acre and conquer the island as well. He sent 17 warships disguised as Crusader ships to attack Limassol. However, the incoming Crusader fleet was destroyed off the coast of Limassol and Baibars' forces were forced to retreat. End of the Crusades. After this victory, Edward felt that in order to create a force capable of retaking Jerusalem, it would be necessary to quell the internal unrest within the Christian state. So he mediated between Hugh and his disaffected knights from the Abelian dynasty of Cyprus. In parallel with the mediation, Edward and Hugh waged war with the Baibars. Negotiations began on the Truce. A treaty of 10 years, 10 months, and 10 days was signed in Caesarea in May 1272. Edmund then immediately set out for England, while Edward wanted to see if the treaty would hold. The following month, an assassination attempt was made on Edward, which was unexpected. According to various accounts, the assassin was sent by the emir of Ramallah or Baibars. Some legends also say that the assassin was sent by the leader of the Hashish, the old man of the mountains. Edward killed the assassin but was seriously wounded by a poisoned dagger, which further delayed his departure. In September 1272, Edward sailed from Acre for Sicily, and while recuperating on the island, he first received news of the death of his son John, and then, a few months later, of the death of his father, Henry III of England. In 1273, Edward began his journey home via Italy, Gascony, and Paris. Edward finally arrived in England in mid-1274 and became King of England on August 19, 1274. Aftermath. Edward was accompanied by Theobald Visconti, who became Pope Gregory X in 1271. Meanwhile, new rifts arose within the Christian states when Charles of Anjou took advantage of the conflict between Hugh III, the Knights Templar, and the Venetians to seize control of the remaining Christian states. After purchasing Mary of Antioch's claims to the Kingdom of Jerusalem, he attacked Hugh III, which sparked a civil war within the empire. In 1277, Roger of San Severino captured Acre for Charles. Although the Crusaders were weakened by their mutual warfare, it offered the prospect of unified control of the Crusades under Charles. However, this hope was dashed when Venice proposed that the crusade be called not against the Mamluks, but against Constantinople, where Michael VIII had recently re-established the Byzantine Empire and driven out the Venetians. Pope Gregory did not support such an attack, but in 1281 Pope Martin IV consented to it. The ensuing failure prompted the Sicilian Vespers on March 31st, 1282 by Michael VIII, and Charles was forced to return home. This was the last crusade launched against the Byzantines in Europe or the Muslims in the Holy Land. The remaining 9 years saw increasing demands from the Mamluks, including demands for tribute. In 1289, Sultan Kalawan gathered a large army and attacked the remnants of the county of Tripoli. He eventually besieged the capital and captured it after a bloody assault. However, the attack on Tripoli was particularly disastrous for the Mamluks, as Christian resistance reached frenzied levels and Kalawan lost his eldest and most capable son in the campaign. He waited another 2 years to regain his power. In 1275, Abaka sent a messenger to Edward with a letter. Abaka urged Edward to mobilize for another crusade, saying that he could offer more help this time. Edward wrote back the same year, thanking Abaka for his help in the 9th Crusade and noting his love for Christianity. He said that he did not know when another crusade would take place, but that he was eager to return to the Holy Land, and that he would inform Abaka if the Pope declared a second crusade. This letter was almost certainly a formality, as Edward made no preparations for a second crusade. In 1276, another envoy was sent to Edward with the same message, with an additional message of apology for his failure to intervene effectively in 1271. In 1291, a group of pilgrims from Acre attacked and killed 19 Muslim merchants in a Syrian caravan in retaliation. Kalawan demanded that they pay an extraordinary sum in compensation. When no response came, the Sultan used this as an excuse to besiege Acre and eliminate the last independent Crusader state to hold the Holy Land. Kalawan died during the siege, leaving Khalil, the only surviving member of his family, as Mamluk Sultan. After the capture of Acre, The Crusader States ceased to exist except for Cyprus. The center of Crusader power shifted north to Tortosa and eventually to Cyprus across the sea. In 1299, a Mongol army led by Ghazni Khan began a series of successful raids against the Mamluks in an area northeast of Homs as far south as Gaza. He finally withdrew from Syria in 1300. The Mongols and the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia led another campaign to retake Syria, but were soon defeated by the Mamluks at the Battle of Shakab in 1303.